In a world of challenges and uncertainties, hope shines as a beacon, guiding us through the dark times and showing us the way to brighter days ahead. But what exactly is hope? Where does it come from? And how does it shape our lives? I'm Annie Bennett, and I'd love you to join me on this journey as I explore the meaning of hope. I'll delve into philosophical perspectives, personal stories, and scientific insights to understand the power of this elusive emotion. So whether you're seeking inspiration, comfort, or simply a deeper understanding of the human spirit, let's embark on this exploration together and discover the extraordinary power of hope. Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Hope podcast with me, Annie Bennett. Today I am delighted to have my guest. I'm really looking forward to our chat. She is a psychologist and coach, and I'm really delighted to introduce Dr. Claire Vowell to the podcast. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you so much. That's quite the introduction.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Now, obviously, one thing I often get my guests to do when they come onto the podcast is introduce themselves, because not all my listeners will know who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about your story, and what you do, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Dr. Claire Vowell, otherwise known as Claire or Mummy to my two little girls. I am a psychologist and coach, and I work with high-performing individuals to help them unlock their full potential, redefine success on their terms. And the way we sort of do that, we work a lot on self-belief. We address limiting beliefs. And when I talk about limiting beliefs, they might be things like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, like thrown around a lot at the moment. We also work on really positive, powerful performance habits, easy to say, to make sure that people can incorporate daily habits, daily routines that help them move towards being the best version of themselves. So, a slightly interesting background as a psychologist. I actually come from a corporate background. I did a business degree. I worked in corporate comms for 8 or 9 years, and then had a bit of a crisis of meaning and decided I wanted to go back to something I'd always wanted to do and do something that held a lot more meaning for me. So decided to retrain as a psychologist. Slightly naive to what the process entailed, but went off to do a master's, realised I really needed to do a doctorate, did all those things, became a psychologist, and then went to work in NHS, worked in private practice, and then latterly decided that I was really excited about the developments in digital mental health. So I went to work in tech startups, some amazing companies doing really exciting things, creating apps, websites, chatbots that support mental health. So that was my career for a few years, working in sort of cutting edge mental health, working in an AI company, which was really exciting. But had again a second crisis of meaning when I realised that work was really coming before family life. Yeah. And the very fast moving industry I was in, very high expectations and demands, just wasn't really compatible with being able to be present for my little girls. So I then made the decision to leave that role, leave that industry, and go back to working for myself. So that is where I am now, working as a coach, psychologist, and being a lot more present for my little girls, which is a really great place to be.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's often the case, isn't it? I mean, I've found that a lot with my bakers, that they'll be in a job, they'll be in, whatever role that they're in, having a career, and actually find that it really doesn't match up with being a mum, being a parent. And they, rearrange their lives to accommodate that. And running your own business is, I mean, it's hard work, isn't it? I mean, it's not a walk in the park. But yeah, what I'm really interested to talk to you about, we were talking about it before, a little bit before, was the role of hope as a part of well-being and a part of people's well-being journey, really. You talked a little more about the word hopelessness. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a psychology perspective, hope is a really fascinating topic, because there is reams of research, lots and lots of research that shows the positive benefits that hope has. So we know that people who have high hope, hopeful people, have greater overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
We know that they have lower levels of depression, and we know that it sort of works as a protective mechanism, as a buffer against stress. So
Mm,
hopeful individuals are less likely to feel stress. Similarly, it works to protect people or to support people in anxiety.
mm,
And overall, it just predicts greater life satisfaction. So this is really potent. It's really powerful.
yeah.
Um, so it's a really, really exciting area to sort of look into. But then I think the flip side of it, which is what we were touching on briefly, is what comes up probably more in clinical training, which is hopelessness.
Mm,
And actually, we're trained as psychologists to watch out for hopelessness,
mm,
because hopelessness is a symptom of severe depression. Um, and actually, much more seriously than that, we know that hopelessness is a risk factor for suicidality.
mm,
So it's something that you're really attuned to as a clinician. You're really looking out for, that
mm,
becomes quite worrying, when somebody loses hope.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating because, as we were saying, it's easy to be flippant with, oh, I'm hopeful, I've got hope, and
Mm,
hope is just sort of being a bit positive, and but actually, it's the lack of hope can actually be a symptom, and actually can be recognised as,
mm,
it's a marker for what you look out for
yeah.
for people in need and for vulnerable people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a really, really fascinating area, but I think so important. I'm not sure, I think this is why your podcast is just so brilliant, because I'm not sure we talk about it enough.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I mean, one of the reasons that I set up the podcast and I wanted it to be about hope was because I find the subject really important. That if you've got hope, if you look forward to things, if you think, if you have that mindset, when I was first diagnosed, the Macmillan nurse and the oncologist both said, "Oh, your attitude's going to take you a long way."
Mm,
You know,
mm.
do you know, I'm not sure if you do, but is there any research that says how it can prolong a life? I mean, I suppose it's a difficult thing to assess, isn't it? But
So I would have to really look into that research. And I was saying to you before, I'm always really cautious about saying anything that isn't completely
yeah,
science
of
backed. I
course.
like my
Yeah,
evidence. I'm all about the
yeah,
data. What I do know is that hopeful individuals are more likely to engage in healthy behaviors.
yeah,
So
that
they're
makes
more likely to do things that keep them healthy. So it would follow that,
yeah,
likely yes.
yeah,
But because if you're hopeful, you're much more likely to sort of invest in yourself, I suppose. You're going to do the things that keep you well, keep you healthy, support your well-being. So definitely from a physical health perspective, there are, massive benefits there.
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? So what I'm interested now in is if a psychologist comes across someone who does have that hopelessness,
Mm,
and it flags up. What are the things that can be said, or what can
mm,
be said immediately to a patient, who displays those things? What kind of things
yeah.
can sort of ease that burden or help in some way?
Mm. There's lots of different things. I think one of them is around, I mean, it's not the clinical term, but it's sort of one foot in front of the other. If you're talking to somebody who is severely depressed, can't get out of bed, you want to help them think about what the next step is. What can they do? Can they get out of bed and have a shower? Sometimes it's just that.
Yeah,
So there's something around encouraging what we would call sort of behavioral activation. So getting people to re-engage with life and do things.
yeah,
So at the very severe end of the scale, that is literally as simple as feeding yourself, washing yourself. All of those things go. When somebody's severely depressed, all of those things that we take for granted are so difficult, so difficult. So you'd start with, if we're looking at the severe end scale, I'd start with looking at that. Let's just get somebody up and going again.
yeah,
Um, I also would always look at connection. I would look at their support network. I would encourage them to engage, with any friends and family that they have.
mm,
That social connection, human connection is so important. And it definitely plays into this idea around hope. It gives you, a hard ride for connection. We need that
yeah,
human interaction.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
again, when people are very depressed and feeling very hopeless, they tend to withdraw. They tend to cut themselves off. They tend to avoid people. So you're looking at reconnecting with people, So
Yeah,
that connection piece is really important. Um, Another thing that I do is which is more sort of a positive psychology tool, really, but look at sort of mindfulness and presence and gratitude practice, and
Mm,
notice what there is maybe that to be grateful for.
mm,
Um, which is interesting actually, because it's slightly off on a tangent. But one of the things I do think about hope is that I think it's very powerful when it's combined with mindfulness,
yeah,
because I guess we don't always want to be just looking into the future.
mm,
We also need to appreciate the here and now. So
yeah,
there's something about that, something really powerful about connecting hope and all the amazing things that can happen with action, because we know that hope, hope without action is just optimism.
absolutely.
Um, and then something about also being present and being grateful and being connected to what you have in the here and now.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That is so true because it's so easy, isn't it, for someone, particularly, someone perhaps in, a position like mine where you've got a life limiting illness and you're
Mm,
constantly thinking future, you're thinking, oh, what will I do if this happens and what will I do when that happens?
mm,
Um, but you're right, you have to sort of take a breath and go, well, what about now? How do I feel now? What's going on
yeah,
now?
yeah,
How am I being now? And that's so true that the present
yeah.
is as valuable as looking into the future, isn't it? Making sure
Mm,
you're okay now.
mm. And I think it's really interesting that you said, you need to stop and take a breath,
Yeah.
because again, from a sort of clinical perspective, that constant sort of future gazing can be related to anxiety. And it's
Yeah.
quite interesting that you almost sort of physically modeled that when you started to be like, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, in the future, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?" And
Yeah.
actually that's where I think the real power is also, connecting into your sort of mindfulness and presence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true, isn't it? Yeah, because I mean, obviously when I had my diagnosis last year, and all sorts of things, go through
Mm,
your head, obviously.
yeah,
Um,
of course.
but I'm of such a positive mindset and I have such
Mm,
an optimistic outlook on life generally that I'm hopeful because that's the way I am and that's the kind of person.
mm.
But I'm also grounded in, the here and now, and I go out for a walk and I breathe the air and I listen to the birds
Mm,
and all that kind of stuff. And I make sure that everything around me is great for now. It's not just, oh, we'll
yeah,
do that because we'll tidy up next week or we'll go on holiday, we'll sort that out another time. We'll start
yeah.
talking about it now. Someone said a phrase, something about, oh, it's not one day, think of it as day one. And I love that.
Interesting. Yeah.
You're thinking of all these one, oh, one day I'll do this, one day I'll do that.
Yeah.
But make it day one.
Make
Make
it day one.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful, isn't it?
It's so tell me about your business coaching. I'd love to hear a bit more about that. You sort of work with business women mainly, or anyone in business?
So I work with men and women.
Mm,
They tend to be, the sort of thing in common is that they tend to be high achievers, entrepreneurs as well as execs. And the work I do is sort of the twofold: unlocking potential, making sure that people are achieving everything they want to achieve. And that often is linked to sort of addressing limiting beliefs. I work a lot. I'm really passionate about working with self-belief. I think that's sort of the core of everything about us. And if
yeah,
you can really make sure that if you believe in yourself, you can achieve anything. It's our potential is limitless.
yeah,
But sometimes there's a piece of work to do to work on that, and it can be an ongoing process. It's certainly something I've had to work very hard on, and continue to. But
yeah,
the sort of work, the sorts of things that come up there for the high achievers tend to be perfectionism is a huge thing that comes up.
yeah.
Um, and that's a really interesting area of work, because high achievers are often very reluctant to let go of perfectionism,
Mm,
because their identity can be very closely tied to it. They also kind of associate their success with perfectionism often. So
mm,
I am where I am because I'm a perfectionist, and it can sometimes become a little bit of a badge of honor.
yeah,
But we know that unhealthy perfectionism can be really damaging. It's where we criticize ourselves very heavily. It's where nothing is ever enough. Whatever you achieve, there's always something else to go for.
mm,
It's that relentless pursuit of success. And that tends to be very sort of future focused as well. You know, we've talked quite a lot about sort of timelines, haven't we?
Mm.
And that sort of relentless, not noticing, not appreciating, not celebrating the success in the here and now. But okay, that's done, job done. What's next? What's next? What's next? So there's a kind of a big education piece around actually you can still have high standards. You can still want to achieve. You know, these high performers are all about achievement. But what we want to get rid of is that self-criticism that's driving, and that inner critic that's driving, that inner critic that's never satisfied, that inner critic that says this isn't enough. So that's always a very interesting piece of work. um, the other thing that comes up a lot is sort of imposter syndrome,
Mm.
and really, really fascinating when you're working with people who, you know, clearly, you know, by any objective measure are highly successful and still have that underlying fear of, oh, I'm going to get found out, or I'm just here by luck, or who am I to have this job title? So that's another really interesting piece of work, and unraveling all of those pieces, and really helping to build the self-belief.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you're describing this sort of perfectionist, either business owner or executive.
Mm,
I'm thinking, at what point do they realize that they need help? There must be a sort of, perhaps, is it a light bulb of awareness? Oh my goodness me, I need help with this. Because by its very nature, perhaps it's something that they might not see as a problem. It's, you know, perfection
mm,
is me and it's how I am. So
yeah.
so how does it manifest itself in, oh gosh, I need help with this?
Two things I would say. One, stress and burnout. So
Right.
perfectionism and burnout are very closely interrelated. So people would often, and like I said, a lot of high achievers don't view perfectionism as a problem, you know, until you really start digging into it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it would be possibly unlikely for somebody to come to me or to others working in similar fields and say, I want to work just on perfectionism. It's much more likely they're going to come through the route of working on stress and burnout, which is another big piece
Okay.
of work I do. The
Right.
other way that it gets sort of identified, and I see this quite often as well, is that people realize that they're having all of these, you know, successes and they should be kind of popping the champagne, but they feel a bit empty. The success doesn't feel
Oh, interesting.
fulfilling. They
Yeah.
don't, and then they start thinking, hang on, there's something wrong here. There's, you know, I'm ticking the boxes, but something isn't feeling right. And then, you know, then that's when you start to unpack some of the beliefs. That's when you tend to, I do quite a lot of work around sort of redefining success on your terms. What does success mean to you, where you are in your phase of life? A lot of high achievers have been on a kind of almost an autopilot journey where they've done well in school and then they've gone to a good university, and then, you know, if we're looking at execs, they've perhaps gone on to a grad scheme and then a, you know, fast track to leadership and all of these kind of things.
Mm.
um, and you get to the point where when you stop to think about it, you're following somebody else's version of success. And
Yeah.
I think that I mean, I sort of relate that slightly to my journey, in terms of, for me, in this phase of life, I'm certainly ambitious. I certainly want to achieve. I definitely have got lots of ideas about, you know, where I want the business to go and all the rest of it. But
Mm.
success for me now means being a good mum. If I'm not a good mum, none of it matters. So
Yeah.
it's around, you know, and these things evolve and change as life situations changes, you know, life happens, and naturally that's going to impact
Yeah.
what our priorities are, you know, our values, etc. But sometimes we need, and I think this is where coaching is so valuable, is it gives us the space to stop and think.
Yeah.
And lots of people who are just on this absolute, you know, trajectory of go, 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 that's exactly what they need, is just a pause, just to stop and reflect and look around and, you know, think about what's important.
Yeah.
um so the underlying piece of work I always do is really thinking about values and priorities. You know, if you're not connected to what's important to you, how could success feel meaningful?
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, I've seen it a lot around at the moment, you know, people talk
Mm.
about what success means. I first came into the online world in 2020 in lockdown, as lots of people did. Uh, and there was lots of talk about, you know, 10-figure months and all that kind of,
Yeah.
you know, g online business garbage, really. Um, and about, you're only successful if you've got this, that, and the other. But now there's a real shift happening with people saying, well, 10K months are meaningless unless it's actually bringing you what makes you happy. And
Yeah.
there's a real shift to that. And also I was thinking about the curriculum, because having been a teacher,
Mm.
curriculum in various different forms, but it's still not right. It's still Victorian, in my opinion, because it teaches children that they've got to get all the exams, get a job, do
Mm.
40 years, retire and die, and that's it.
Mm.
There's doesn't seem to be much in the way of, well, this is what success looks like for different people. For you,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a job. It might be doing something different.
Yeah,
Um, there-
absolutely.
there's no sort of focus on happiness in schools. It seems really silly to say, but I think
Yeah.
we've lost that ability to actually stop and say, actually, if I do something that makes me happy, everyone around me is going to be happier as well. It's not just
Mm.
to benefit me. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, that huge ripple effect. Yeah, it'd be interesting because my little girls are quite young at the moment, and I'm quite curious as to how their sort of academic journey is going to pan out. And I'd be definitely keeping a close eye on, are they introducing, really critical thinking and creative thinking? And is there opportunity for people to really think outside the box and not have to follow those very traditional career paths? I sincerely hope it's changed. I was very boxed in by it when I
yeah.
was at school.
I
I,
mean,
I was, academically successful, and therefore I
yeah,
had to. I remember being absolutely, absolute barrage of the thing I should be doing was to law. Absolutely, you should be doing law. I've never expressed an interest in law. I don't want to do, but you're going to get these exam results, and you should do law. I don't want to do law. Well, you're going to get these exams. Well,
yeah,
get that law, but let's make sure you go to Oxbridge because you're going to get the. I don't want to.
yeah. I
And
know.
it was just this relentless sort of, if you're fitting you into a box of, if you're going to get these grades, this means this about you as a person,
Yeah,
but without any appreciation of interests, values, passions, none of it.
yeah. I know. I think there's also a bit of this sort of whole growth mindset, fixed mindset thing in there as well,
Mm,
because
mm.
I mean, I'm really into that, and I'm absolutely
Oh
fascinated
yes, me too.
by it. And I'm often saying, there's no such thing as talent. It's all skill. You learn a skill.
Mm,
It's that thought that actually, if you want something, you have to work for it. You have to put the
mm.
effort in, and you have to. Nothing comes easy to anyone. It's the 10,000 hours of the gold medalist kind of
Yeah, yeah,
idea, isn't it? And I wonder if the whole perfectionist thing is part of that. That
yeah,
fact that I've always been told I'm clever. I've always been so, therefore I'm a perfectionist and I must do everything absolutely perfectly. Otherwise, I'll let myself
mm.
down and I'll be seen to be a failure.
Yeah. I mean, it gets tied up in identity and self-worth. And that's the problem is that even coming from, great families where everyone's been very supportive and celebrated success, the problem is that often that gets internalized as I'm only worthy or I'm only lovable if I'm achieving.
Yes.
And this can come from, the absolute best intentions, of parents and people, teachers, and all the rest of it, where, great, you've done so well, you're so brilliant, look at what you've done and look at how great you are. But yeah, I work with lots of people where that's just been internalized as I'm nothing without achievement.
Absolutely.
And I've certainly been down a bit of that journey. It's really tough. It's really hard to disentangle the identity,
Yeah.
from that. But I think the issue being is that you can still, what I try and explain to my high achievers is that you can still achieve, you can still be successful, but you have to understand that you're worthy without those achievements as well. You are lovable and loved without the job title on the door, without the, I don't know, £1 billion exit, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You are still worthy, you are still lovable.
But it is a cultural thing, isn't it? I mean, in the last few years of my teaching, or last 10 or so years of my teaching, it really, teachers were taught really very much that we don't say you're a naughty child. We say you're showing, I don't like your behavior. It's not you
Yes,
don't like it, I don't like your behavior. And it's very separating the person from their behavior, and
exactly. Yeah.
making the child, have ownership of their behavior, but
Yeah.
valuing the child. And I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
sort of almost goes against cultural things where, saying, oh, he's a good boy, he sat really nice and quietly,
Mm.
actually he's a good and the whole thing about, I hate to say it, but the whole thing about if you're good you'll get a present from Father Christmas, that you look at that in
Yeah.
detail, there's something, oh, hang on a minute, surely if they're a, if you're showing that they're a worthy human being, you should be showing them that despite
Mm.
the behaviors they're displaying. It's interesting,
Yeah.
isn't it? Interesting.
It's fascinating. And I have to say, I mean, I think parenting's hard enough. And then I think being a psychologist that's a parent is really bloody hard
Yeah, I can
because you're
imagine.
aware of all of these things and then you've got to apply them.
Yeah.
When we think about perfectionism, I definitely think about the criticism I lay on myself when I get these things wrong, which invariably I
Of
do,
course you
I'm
do. Yeah.
human. But I think what you're saying is so important. I think it's a big cultural shift. And I think we're still getting there
Yeah.
with understanding that that's, talking about separating the behaviors from the child and
Mm.
not over egging the achievements and all of that kind of thing. I think we're getting there, but it's a big change, and not everybody's on board. I certainly see, I guess, grandparents in different generations and the way they would talk. Um, it's also interesting because I mean, as everybody does, we sort of have a blueprint in us from our own upbringing. So
Mm.
you definitely find yourself unconsciously repeating
Yeah.
even phrases,
Yeah.
phrases, behavior like, oh, damn it, got it wrong again.
Yeah. I hear my mother in me all the time.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's fascinating, isn't it? How, but and obviously as adults we take that with us. As you say, it's a case of, well, unless people are praising me, I must be worthless. And often, actually, I say to my bakers, don't surround yourself with people that tell you you're wonderful, because
Mm,
you believe that. If that's the only way that you believe you're wonderful, you've also got to believe people that say you're not wonderful, because you can't
mm.
separate one from the other. So you've got to have this sort of confidence of your own abilities and say,
Yeah,
actually, yes,
absolutely.
what I'm doing is brilliant. And it's great if people say it's brilliant too, but you've
Mm.
got to sort of separate yourself from that, haven't you? You've got to have this own inner belief in yourself.
Belief. Yeah, it's all around the self-belief
Yeah.
and bolstering that instead of just constantly looking for the external validation. I mean, I think that is always a bit of a warning sign, where people are constantly looking for, and it's natural. I mean, we all do it. We all like a pat on the back, we all like to be in the spotlight for a moment and someone telling us we've done a good job. I mean, it's natural. And there's nothing wrong in it. I think that's the thing, is
Mm.
that it's okay to enjoy that. Of course it is. But
It
it
is.
does have to be bolstered by I'm all right on my own as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been that person at all.
Mm,
Um, but I've taught I'm particularly through the growth mindset idea, actually, that
yeah.
you are responsible, you have choices, you know, and mistakes and failures are brilliant things to happen. They teach
Yeah,
you how to be, they teach you,
absolutely.
when I was at school, mistakes and failures were big red crosses and, staying at playtime. But now it's very much, oh, what can we learn from this?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
mean, I do mindset work a lot as well, and the
Mm.
growth mindset I think is it's so empowering, isn't it? It's a different slant on life, really.
It's quite liberating, really, to go,
Mm.
actually, I'm not going to let that make me angry. I'm not going to
Yeah.
let it, I'm just, perhaps 5 minutes of grr, which,
Yeah, absolutely.
helps everything cut out. But, I'm going to have control over this. I'm not going to let it control me. It's quite powerful.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Yeah, and I love that exactly what you said. What can I learn from
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always banging on about this, and bakers
this?
say, oh, this cake failed, or I'm, and they even go on to say, oh, I'm useless, I can't do it. I said, don't be silly.
Mm.
What can you learn? What will you do differently next time? And it
Exactly.
really, really that, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Oh, what a fabulous conversation. I could talk to you for hours. Doctor.
Well, another time, definitely.
Absolutely. Now, what I always ask all my guests is, do you have a message of hope for my listeners?
So I think just based on the sort of last bit of conversation we've had, we've talked quite a bit about sort of self-belief And
Mm,
I think my message would be that we actually have incredible capacity to change how we think about ourselves.
mm,
So we don't need to be stuck with limiting beliefs. We don't have to be stuck with stories that limit us, stories that hold us back, stories that stop us achieving our potential. Because at the basic level, our beliefs are just stories we tell ourselves.
mm,
Now, what's really interesting about that is that if they're just stories, we get to rewrite them.
mm.
And I think that is really exciting. And, we can back it with, science. We know that neuroscience now has shown us these amazing advances in scans. We can literally rewire our brains. This is massively hopeful. We get to be different, and we get to take ownership, I think, of our story.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm often saying you don't have to believe everything your brain tells you. And that
Exactly. It's usually
absolutely
wrong.
no medical proof here. We have a
Yes.
doctor telling us that that's it. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. If people want to get hold of you or are interested in what you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of social media, I tend to be on LinkedIn the most, and I'm Dr. Claire Vowell on LinkedIn. Um, Instagram, I don't really hang out there very much, but I am there. It's at Dr. Claire Coaching, and otherwise my website, which has sort of all the information about working with me, etc., which is drclairecoaching.co.uk.
Fabulous. I'll put all that in the show notes. We'll make sure that all the links are there. But thank you
Super.
so much, Claire, for joining me today. It's been
Thank you,
a
Annie.
fascinating conversation.
Brilliant conversation.
Absolutely lovely to have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Chronicles of Hope podcast with me, Annie Bennett. I hope you found inspiration, comfort, or perhaps even a newfound perspective around the meaning of hope. To find out more about the aims of the Chronicles of Hope organisation, please visit thechroniclesofhope.org, where you will find links to our social media accounts and where you will be able to make a much needed and appreciated donation. Thank you.